Hey, what's going on, dudes? My name is MrRhexx, and we are back with some more Elder Scrolls Skyrim. On the last episode, we finished the dungeon of the Argenwunde variety, and we talked about the pillars of the world, the towers that sort of maintain this planet from existing in this sort of physical reality. It was a pretty heavy topic, very philosophical, but also sort of like big in scope when it comes down to the reason this world exists and where Elder Scrolls might be going in the future in terms of maybe like the bigger enemies. Today, however, we're going to be relaxing a little bit with some of these bigger topics. Today, we're actually going to be doing Sheogorath, specifically, of course, his quest. I'll let you guys sort of talk me into it in the comments below on the last episode, and I grew convinced. We have here Battlegrounds Cat 2 that said, hey Rex, love the videos. I was wondering if you could go in depth about... Hold on, can't quite read when I'm fighting saber cats, dude. Alright, that guy went flying. I was wondering if you could go into depth about Jyggalag, especially regarding the history of the Grey March and whether he has any involvement in Skyrim. We're going to be answering your question throughout this episode because we are indeed going to be doing Jyggalag. However, was hoping to do this dragon before we actually left the area of Riften because I kind of said a couple of episodes ago that I was going to be doing it, and then I just kind of left it. I just never ended up doing it because I didn't have the necessary healing materials in order to actually fight the dragon. So we left it, and I really want the dragon specifically because we need the dragon soul in order to activate what is one of my favorite shouts, which was Elemental Fury. Of course, Elemental Fury can't quite be used with weapons that are enchanted, I believe. So we're going to be basically cycling through a few weapons in order to be able to use it. And, okay. I figured that was going to happen. It happened the last time we were here, so of course it has to happen again. I believe we're actually playing on a higher difficulty since the last time we made it here, so things are going to be a little bit more rough, I would say. But after doing this, we're also going to be actually collecting... Can I run? Let's just escape. There we go. We're actually going to be obtaining our new companion. I let you guys vote through Strapple. Is she actually fighting the... She got hit by the trap. We're going to be collecting our new follower, actually. Ilya has been fantastic. She's pretty great. It's going to be actually her last encounter with us. Because you guys voted on Cicero. Which, ironically speaking, is going to be a great choice for this episode since we're going to be doing Sheogorath. Oh, I need to be... Cast my offhand weapon. It's important for me to use my offhand spell because I actually attack faster if I'm dual-wielding weapons because of my dual-wielding perks, so this guy's tough. But yeah, I'm pretty glad that you guys voted for Cicero because it sort of makes sense, of course, with Sheogorath both being particularly crazy individuals. See if we can hide here while simultaneously obtaining this. Fear, dismay. Not quite a very useful one. You alright, dude? You guys were saying that I should give her some weapons and armor, and probably I should. Typically, then this guy is trolling me a little bit. Ah! Alright. Can you please come down so that I can finish you? Whoa! Okay. Oh my god. That was kind of difficult. I might actually die here because of the dot. I hope not, because my HP was literally like 0, dude. Did I made it? I did. Alright, fantastic. There you go. Appreciate my Captain Dread's Frost Atronac. Pretty useful stuff. But yeah, let's just absorb this. We'll get the chest and we can get out of here. The start of this episode is gonna be I'm gonna try and move through as quick as I can so as to not waste too much time because we do have a lot to do. I'm hoping to finish the What am I doing? We're going to the sanctuary. I want to finish Sheogorath quest this episode, so I just want to kind of get these shores out of the way. I took the time to go through a myriad of stores before this recording so that I could buy as many potions as I could and, you know, sold as many items as I could. Sort of storing some of the important items that I have, like the gems and some of the legendary items, like you know, because we're going to be getting a lot now that we're going to be doing the Daedric quests, so I want to save them all.
Cicero is at your service.
Still here. I'll head back home if you need me.
Sorry, you were awesome, but we got Cicero to contend with. Now I command you to accompany me.
Oh, yes, Cicero and the listener. On the hunt.
Fantastic. It's interesting that Sheogorath, specifically, he sees madness not as a crippling thing, but as a blessing, which is cool because Cicero sort of agrees in a way. You know, Cicero would have probably killed himself if it wasn't because of the insanity, because of the madness. When everyone sort of died around him back in sort of Oblivion times, when the sanctuary in Cyrodiil, all of the sanctuaries were essentially destroyed, he was basically left alone to take care of the coffin of the Night Mother, and basically just by himself in the middle of like a crypt in the darkness, just cleaning the Night Mother. And it is said actually that the madness was a blessing, was a help given to him so that he could survive that sort of difficult ordeal, which I think is particularly fascinating. But we're going to be making our way to Solitude, and we are supposed to find the Serpent of Sheogorath, who is going to allow us entrance into the mind of Pelagius the Mad. Now, what's interesting is that Pelagius the Mad, this particular quest, actually has a lot to do with Potema, which is known to be one of the most sort of aggressive and evil monarchs that Skyrim has ever had. And it's interesting because Pelagius basically came directly after Potema and was also sort of known to be one of the most evil rulers that Solitude and, you know, henceforth Skyrim and even the Empire has ever had, and we'll cover that in just a minute.
You help me. You help people, right? That's what you do.
That's what I do. I can help you, but what do you need?
My master has abandoned me.
Thank you very much.
Abandoned his people. And nothing I say can change his mind. Now he refuses to even see me. He says I interrupt his vacation. It's been so many years. Won't you please help?
How can I find your master?
Last I saw him, he was visiting a friend in the Blue Palace. But no one as mundane as a Jarl. No. Such people are below him. No, he went into the forbidden wing of the palace to speak with an old friend. Said it had been ages since they had last had tea. Oh, and you'll need the hip bone. It's very important. No entering Pelagius's wing without that.
Oh, the hip bone. Of course, I wouldn't dare to go without it, but why don't you just leave your master?
Oh, you just don't understand. Without him, I am not free. Without him, I am doomed. All of his empire shall fall into chaos.
That's exactly my response. All right. Well, just by interacting with his servant, we've actually gotten the Daedric god of madness Sheogorath's quest, and we're supposed to go into the Blue Palace and for some reason use the hip bone to find our way into this person.
Mother? Is that your voice I hear? No. Just my head playing tricks.
Foolish Cicero. Yeah, very vocal person. Might create a little bit of trouble with the narrative, but we'll see how this goes. Alright, to actually get access to the wing, we're going to have to talk to a few individuals. See, the problem here is that this particular wing, the Pelagius wing, this used to be the place where Pelagius used to live. And the issue there, I did not mean to do that, is that this area is actually supposed to be cursed. It's a part of the palace that is cursed. And it is in fact the reason why Pelagius the Mad became mad. And we're going to be talking about specifically, you know, all the details surrounding that when we talk about Potema, which is an entire quest line here in Elder Scrolls. But the gist of it is that Potema, was basically this evil sort of sorceress, this evil wizard, and when she died, she sort of cursed an area of the palace, which happened to be the area where Pelagius went to live after all that happened. And of course, the curse manifested itself in his dreams, and it is said that he would have these night terrors that would just assault him basically for years, and it was the reason why he became mad. And we'll talk about actually how that madness sort of manifested in just a bit. Let's go ahead and talk to the servant if we can to get that to be opened.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you look a little sickly.
I need to get to the wing.
Oh, I'd get in trouble for that. It's not allowed. Besides, it's scary in there.
Caesar's just laughing in the back. Oh my, this was a mistake, you guys. Falk asked me to check it out.
Well, I suppose in that case it's okay to let you in. But only briefly. Be careful and come right back.
This is sort of a bug,
Because
because you're supposed to do a quest for Falk. Falk is one of the sort of advisors to the queen here, and you're supposed to sort of help him out with a few quests in order to get him to like you enough to give you the key to enter this location. But it's kind of a bug. We can just sort of skip it, which is no problem. We get the key and we go in. So we actually get to see the wing where this emperor used to live. Pelagius wasn't just the Jarl of Solitude. He eventually became the emperor of the empire. It's just a lot of politics. It has a lot to do with Potema and the War of the Red Diamond. Basically, there was this struggle to figure out who was the real emperor of the empire, and it caused a massive war that lasted for literally decades. And through a lot of politics, the father of Pelagius became the emperor, and then he died, and Pelagius then became the emperor. His empire, though, was pretty weird, because by that point, Pelagius was already pretty mad. It is said that this particular individual sort of shifted between being obese, like being really fat, and then being extremely skinny to the point where it would be scary, like he would just die out of just not eating, basically. It is said that he would become, like he would just get naked in the middle of dinner when eating with other people. He would just go and get naked. He would say random things, that he would defecate on the floor so that people would clean it up, so that his servants would have something to do. Ironically, he would also wake up in the middle of the night to clean the entirety of the keep, basically in the imperial city, because he just liked cleanliness, which is kind of odd. It was just a very, very odd person. In fact, he actually was completely sort of segregated by the imperial council, by the council of elders in the empire. They didn't really want it, like, the people that actually ruled the empire didn't want Pelagius to embarrass them, basically, because he was just actually crazy. So even as an emperor, he didn't really rule because of that. We'll actually get to meet him.
Marty, Pelly, my dear. Oh, I couldn't. Goes right through me. Besides, I have so many things to do. So many undesirables to contend with. Naysayers, buffoons, detractors. Why, my headsman hasn't slept in 3 days.
You are far too hard on yourself, my dear, sweet, homicidally insane Pelagius. What would the people do without you? Dance, sing, smile, grow old? You are the best septum that's ever ruled. Well, except for that Martin fella. But he turned into a dragon god, and that's hardly sporting. You know, I was there for that whole sordid affair. Marvelous time. Butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, and the cheese to die for.
Yes, as you've said countless times before.
Harumph. Well, then, if you're going to be like that, perhaps it's best I take my leave. A good day to you, sir. I said good day.
Yes, go. Leave me to my ceaseless responsibilities and burdens.
Then we're supposed to talk to him, It's interesting that Pelagius is actually not a Nord. He's actually half Imperial, half High Elf. His mother was High Elf, his father was an Imperial. And the reason that he ruled Solitude was because he was put there basically by the Empire. He wasn't actually selected by the Moot. Which is, one of the many examples why, people like Ulfric, for example, get pissed, right? Because the Nords don't even get to rule a lot of their kingdom. Which sort of, that can make sense in that context. And he was basically an example of that, especially because he was a crazy example. He killed people. He was insane. He basically, like very much like Potema, which, wasn't even a Nord either, I believe. So, it just kind of happens. Hello.
How rude! Can't be bothered to host an old friend for a decade or two.
Now, this particular point, I do want to kind of stop here for just a second and mention that, so, basically, people believe that the Sheogorath that you see before you is not actually the Sheogorath that has always existed, right? And this basically comes from the fact that during the DLC of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, at the very end, it is said that the main character of Oblivion, who is known as the hero of Kvatch, he actually becomes Sheogorath. That once Sheogorath sort of becomes Jyggalag, he gives the mantle of Sheogorath to the main character, and then the main character sort of mantles the god and becomes Sheogorath. What's interesting about it is that this particular Sheogorath, which is supposed to be that guy, by the way, that happened 200 years or so before this that's happening right now. It's interesting that Pelagius the Mad actually existed way before that. Like, Pelagius is actually pretty old. So it's interesting because, this Sheogorath talks to Pelagius as if they have known each other basically since the death of Pelagius, right? It talks about him being friends. They talk about, like, events that have transpired basically before. Okay, how do I explain this? Some of the comments that this Sheogorath makes, are events that transpired before the hero of Kvatch was born, which sort of throws a little bit of a wrench into some of this hypothesis. Especially when you consider that some of the developers from Elder Scrolls Oblivion actually did come out and say that the idea that the hero of Kvatch actually mantled Sheogorath, like, that was never something that was planned. Like, that was never something that was written in the developing sort of ideas, the concept, the lore concepts that the developers had basically for Elder Scrolls Oblivion. That it was something that just kind of happened, and then the player base just kind of ran with it. Now, it's very possible that they made it canon because of that, because sort of the players ran with it. But it's just interesting to see kind of like the fact that Jyggalag doesn't actually show up at all in Skyrim. Like, every single Daedric prince is here in this game, but Jyggalag isn't. And then, of course, what I just mentioned, it definitely kind of throws a wrench in those plans. Assuming that, like, the reality is that Jyggalag eventually could have sort of de-transformed back into Sheogorath, and that this is the same Sheogorath that has always existed. But on the other hand, that ending in Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where Jyggalag basically tells the main character, you will become Sheogorath. You get to keep the staff of Sheogorath. You will have control over this realm. Like, are you a god now? Like, it's basically, it really does insinuate that the main character does become Sheogorath. So we're kind of left in this kind of middle ground where we don't really know exactly what's going on. And again, the fact that we don't see Jyggalag at all, it's kind of bizarre. Like, there are actually only 2 books that ever even mention Jyggalag, and those books came before Oblivion, right? So there's not even like any written books about Jyggalag that came after Oblivion, and that's, again, also very bizarre. You can see that our clothes were actually changed for the quest. We also do not have access to our inventory. I'm pressing my inventory button and it's not opening. We actually don't have access to anything.
How rude! Can't be bothered to host an old friend for a decade or two.
Wait, where are we?
Inside the mind of Pelagius, silly.
Ah, stupid me.
Oh, is it your first time?
Yeah, you could say so, but who were you talking to?
Pelagius the Third. Now, Surely even you know about Pelagius's decree. On his deathbed, oh, and this was inspired, he forbade death! That's right! Death! Outlawed!
Okay, well, I'm here to deliver a message.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, what kind of message? A song? A summons? Wait, I know! A death threat written on the back of an Argonian concubine. Those are my favorites. Well, spit it out, mortal. I haven't got an eternity. Actually, I do. Little joke. But seriously, what's the message?
Now, you can tell that he has a very sort of strong, like Scottish, is it Irish accent? That actually comes from the original Sheogorath, who used to have that accent. So it's also weird that this one has it. I was asked to retrieve you from your vacation.
Were you now?
Mm-hmm.
By whom? Wait! Don't tell me. I want to guess. Was it Molag? No. Little Tim, the Toymaker's son, huh? What? The ghost of King Lysandes? Or was it one? Yes! Stanley, the talking grapefruit from Passwall! I'm wrong on all accounts, aren't I? Ha! No matter! Honestly, I don't want to know. Why ruin the surprise? But more to the point, do you, tiny, puny, expendable little mortal, actually think you can convince me to leave? Because that's crazy! You do realize who you're dealing with here.
The Ghost King of Lysandes is also basically he's inferencing an event that happened in Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, which is not something that the main character of Elder Scrolls Oblivion would know. Then again, everything that I'm saying can basically be countered by just saying that, oh well, once he became Sheogorath, because it's not just that he became Sheogorath in the sense that it's not just that he took his power, but he mantled Sheogorath. Mantling a person basically means becoming that person. So you can make the argument that he basically is the god now, right? Like both sort of combined each other. Or you can also say that by becoming a god, you become omniscient and you just know all these things. Like there are many arguments that you can use. It's just interesting how many, like, it's interesting to see all the different angles that you can sort of use in order to interpret this, basically. I am afraid I don't know, sir. Oh, God.
Actually, you do, sort of. I am a part of you, little mortal. I'm a shadow in your subconscious, a blemish on your fragile little psyche. You know me.
Remember this, by the way.
I just
The sentence.
don't know it. Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Madness, at your service.
So does this mean you will leave or not?
Now that's the real question, isn't it? Because honestly, how much time off could a demented Daedra really need? So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave. That's right. I'm done. Holiday complete. Time to return to the humdrum day-to-day. On one condition. You have to find the way out first. Well, good luck with that.
What's the catch?
Ha! I do love it when the mortals know they're being manipulated. Makes things infinitely more interesting. Care to take a look around? This is not, I dare say, the Solitude Botanical Gardens. Have you any idea where you are? Where you truly are? Welcome to the deceptively verdant mind of the Emperor Pelagius III. That's right! You're in the head of a dead, homicidally insane monarch! Now, I know what you're thinking. Can I still rely on my swords and spells and sneaking and all that nonsense? Sure. Or you could use the Wabachak! Huh?
The Wabachak!
See that coming, did you?
You could use your spells or swords, or you could use the Wabbajack! I love this so much. We actually, do not have access to any of our inventory. We just have access to the Wabbajack. We're supposed to use it to solve a few of the puzzles in this location. Now, the sentence that I told you guys to remember is the sentence where he says that, he is basically just a creation, a figment of my imagination, a figment of my brain. That'll come into play later. But what I do want to talk about is a little bit about Jyggalag, because we haven't even really mentioned much of Jyggalag, and the original question was if I could talk about Jyggalag. So, what's interesting about Jyggalag is that he was essentially considered to be one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful Daedra, basically, in Oblivion. He was Daedric Lord of Order. Now, what's interesting about him is that his particular domain, the domain of Order, conflicted very heavily with the rest of the Daedra, who for the most part personify the ideas of chaos, right? Not just that, but what made Jyggalag, like, he basically had this purpose of expanding his influence. Like, when your sphere of influence is Order, you're basically completely... It's not just that you deny disorder, but it almost gives you this imperative to destroy disorder in order to form order. And this made it so that Jyggalag basically couldn't stagnate. He just couldn't stay in his own sphere of influence and just mind his own business. What he ended up doing is he started expanding. His dominion started sort of moving into other Daedra's dominions. And that was the reason why the other Daedras couldn't just stay still and let it happen, because eventually it was just a matter of time. Jyggalag was going to destroy them all. So they all banded together, basically cursed Jyggalag into becoming Sheogorath, which was the very concept of what is the opposite of Jyggalag, right? Jyggalag was the Daedra of Order. Well, he was transformed into the Daedra of Disorder, into an agent of chaos, of madness, right? And the curse also signified that once every era, specifically at the end of every era, Jyggalag would come out from Sheogorath and would destroy his own creations in order to bring order into his world. And as soon as he did that, he would basically be forced to return into his Sheogorath form. So during the events of the Shivering Isles, once he was sort of entering that transformation, and this happened specifically after the death of Martem Septim, because basically the end of the lineage of the Septim dynasty meant that an era was about to end, which meant that Jyggalag was going to come out, and Sheogorath knew this. So he basically devised a plan where the main character would halt the Grey March. The Grey March is the name of the this transformation when he destroys his entire plane of existence. The idea being that if he could stop this cycle, then Jyggalag could actually be free. And of course, the main character succeeds, and he becomes Sheogorath allegedly, and Jyggalag escapes and is out there in the universe doing what Jyggalag does. But what's interesting is that we know that Jyggalag was one of, if not the strongest Daedra in the world. So when he transformed into Sheogorath, that doesn't mean that he lost his power, right? Like, they don't specifically say necessarily that Jyggalag lost his power. It was just that he was cursed, right? And this is interesting because, for the most part, Sheogorath is actually considered one of the most powerful Daedras in the world because of that, because he hasn't lost his power. And what's interesting is that there are actually a lot of stories that tell of Sheogorath actually defeating the other Daedras in their own sort of games, in their own concepts of power, in their own spheres of influence. There's a story where Sheogorath actually betrays the Daedric god of betrayal, which is Malakath, right? Basically, tricks Malakath into killing his own son, which is pretty crazy. There's a story where Sheogorath enters into a competition with Vermina to see who can sort of sow more horror into someone's sort of brain And, you know, Varmina, we know that she's the Daedric god of, you know, dreams and horrors. Basically what she does is that she makes people have nightmares, makes people have these really terrible dreams where they see people getting like flagellated and skinned alive and people eating each other. Like, she basically concocts the most horrendous images that one can imagine, and of course that drives people mad. And Sheogorath challenged her to see who could drive a person the most mad, right? And Sheogorath ended up winning without even doing anything. And then the third story goes with Sheogorath basically challenging Hircine. The challenge being who could train the idea would be that Hircine would train a creature, and then Sheogorath would also train a creature, and then both creatures would fight each other. And whose creature would win would win the competition. And of course Hircine trains this monstrosity, this like Daedroth, this beast, right? And then Sheogorath just trains basically this tiny little bird, and by using trickery and wits, the bird basically tricks the Daedroth into killing itself. And it's like, and of course throughout these stories, the Daedras sort of grant Sheogorath the honor of his power. Basically, like they grant him that he is indeed powerful and wise, which is interesting because typically from our mortal point of view, from a player's point of view, you see Sheogorath as a joke, right? Like, he's just kind of silly, doing around, doing nothing. But within the concept of the bigger Daedras and sort of like the interrelations between them, like, he's considered to be extraordinarily powerful because he is still Jyggalag. He's still extraordinarily powerful. Now, just something worth noting. I just kind of getting randomly hit. Happens a lot in this place.
Ah! Now this is a sad path. Pelagius hated and feared many things. Assassins, wild dogs, the undead, pumpernickel. But the deepest, keenest hatred was for himself. The attacks he makes on himself can be seen here fully. They're always carried out on the weakest part of his fragile self. The self-loathing enhances Pelagius's anger. But his confidence will shrink with every hit. You must bring the two into balance.
We're supposed to bring the two into balance. So we're gonna be hitting some of these guys with the Wambajang, just one hit each. Or a couple hit each.
Pelagius is finally ready to love himself and continue hating humans.
Kind of a very bizarre little mini quest, but I don't worry too much about the philosophy and what it is exactly that we're doing. Just kind of just letting it happen. But we're going to be going quickly through them just so that we can sort of get it. Oh, before I forget, after you finish each of them, you can actually go back to talk to him.
Do you mind? I'm busy doing the fish stick. It's a very delicate state of mind.
No more self-loathing for Pelagius.
Ah, wonderful. Wonderful. Why waste all that hatred on yourself when it can so easily be directed at others? But someone still has quite a bit to do.
Yeah, after you finish each of the side quests, you can actually go back to him to talk to him, and he'll give you basically a unique voice line that is connected to the side quest that you completed. You only get those if you basically go back to him after each of them. If you do all three of them, you don't get anything. So
You've headed down the path of dreams. Unfortunately for you, Pelagius suffered night terrors from a young age.
the original thought was that was like Varmina doing that, but of course we figured out that it was not. It had a lot to do with the curse that was put into the place by Potema.
All you need to do is find something to wake our poor Pelagius up. You'll find his terrors easy to repel, but persistent.
Now this is actually the hardest one because we actually have a chance of dying, so let's go ahead and quick save. We're supposed to summon his terrors into the physical world and then transform them into something more, or rather less menacing. We can summon a goat. And yeah, we're gonna be summoning them and destroying them basically. There you go. Form a little child. Summon a Hagraven and transform that into a sultry maiden. What's interesting, let's see if it happens. me see if I can make it trigger. No. That's unfortunate. Can I... What if I tackle her? No. Ah, it's not working. You can actually, this character, this NPC, is designed to have a male voice. I was trying to trigger it. It's like one of those bugs, but I can't. Unfortunately. Not sure how to make it trigger. I'm actually doing pretty good. I was a little scared, because last time I did this, I actually kind of got a little wrecked. But this should be the last one, I believe. She's dealing with this dragon priest.
Now, that's something to crow about. With Pelagius up and about, you're moving right along. We'll both be home in no time.
Beautiful. You cannot actually interact with the chest, so there's really nothing else for us to do here. So let's just go ahead and continue. Just gonna be going through these relatively quickly. The night terrors and self-loathing are gone.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. My, what a burden to have carried. But you've done it. You've conquered your own inner demons. Bravo. You didn't mean yourself. You meant Pelagius. Well, same congratulations apply. Just, you know, for what you did for the insane emperor. Conquering paranoia should be a snap after that ordeal.
Easy peasy, dude. Alright, and the last one.
Oh, good choice! Well, good for me. I find everyone being out to get you so terribly entertaining. You might find it less so. You see, Pelagius's mother was, well, let us say, unique. Although I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, she was fairly average for a septim. That woman wielded fear like a cleaver. Or did she wield a cleaver and make people afraid? I never get that part right. Oh, but she taught her son well. Pelagius learned at a very early age that danger could come from anywhere, at any time, delivered by anyone.
I might have mentioned before that Potema was his mother. She's not. I just kind of thought about it that I might have missaid that. But no, Potema just happened to be the last ruler of Solitude before Pelagius became the ruler of Solitude. They were not necessarily related. In fact, they were actually completely opposite during the Great War of the Red Diamond. They were basically on opposite sides. Just wanted to mention that out real quick. In fact, it is, I believe, that the curse that Potema put into Pelagius was not actually because she cursed the wing in the Blue Palace, but instead Potema sort of knew that eventually Pelagius would become the emperor, and she wanted to basically screw him over. So she transformed herself as a hag and appeared in front of Pelagius when he was a small child, and she essentially gave him a magical cursed necklace, so that he would put it on and it would eventually corrupt his mind as he aged, which is one of the many beliefs as to what actually happened back then.
The objective here is simple, you simpleton. Use your Wabacha to defeat the enemy, while they do the same.
So you can actually transform the minion and basically attempt to do that to defeat the other monster, but you're not going to succeed. What you're supposed to do actually is this. Or this. That was actually the wrong one.
Oh, I thought you'd never figure it out. With the threat gone, Pelagius is under the delusion that he's safe, which means you've helped him out, sort of. And we're that much closer to home.
And there you go. The 3 quests are completed, and now all we have to do is go back to Sheogorath. We keep getting like randomly hurt when we pass through some of these arches, which is most bizarre. Now, before we actually complete the quest, because we don't necessarily want to be kicked out just yet, I wanted to answer the second question. Reagan Mundo asked, I love this lore series you've been doing, Rex. All the best, dude. Thank you. Appreciate it. I have a question regarding the truth of the Elder Scrolls lore, especially about the Aedra and the Daedra. We know that every culture has different interpretations about the nature of the gods. Books in-game also have very different and personal views about the gods. That is interesting. I wanted to talk about this specifically because your question really kind of opens up to something that I definitely wanted to speak of, which was Sotha Sil. So in Elder Scrolls Online, you get access to the Clockwork City, which is, of course, reigned by Sotha Sil. Sotha Sil is one of the 3 demigods that ruled Morrowind. Of course, these were dark elves that became demigods/gods thanks to their use of the Heart of Lorkhan, which sort of granted them divinity. And by obtaining divinity, they, became sort of almost like omniscient. They became extremely intelligent and basically divines. They are basically gods. Now, Sotha Sil, what makes him interesting is that he shares a lot of points that are very similar to Jyggalag. Sotha Sil is, he speaks through a series of books that are available to us through Elder Scrolls Online that talk about what is the true purpose of the Aedras, what is the true purpose of reality, which sort of comes to what you were asking, essentially the truth of the Elder Scrolls lore. Sotha Sil's interpretation of the universe is such that he basically believes that Daedras do not actually exist. That the reason that they exist is because of the imperfections of reality. And this comes from the idea that basically anything in the world is Anu. That Anu was this original entity that existed in the cosmos. That there was nothing else that was physical or that existed at all. But Anu wanted to experience something else. He wanted to see himself. He wanted to see what he could accomplish. He wanted to just sort of go to the next level, so to speak. And what he did is he separated himself. He sundered himself into different sort of portions. Now, the problem that ended up happening after that was that the portions ended up becoming sort of sentient. And these portions named themselves, most notably Padome. When Padome separated from Anu, it grew sentient and then named itself Padome. And of course, there's many different entities that came after that, all basically formed the shape of Anu, and then the worlds were created, the Ada sort of were created, and then the humans and the elves and all these different things. But his argument is that we're all just part of Anu, and that the naming of things is actually one of the greatest sins that has ever made, right? Because when Padome said, I am no longer part of Anu, in fact, I am my own entity, and as such, I'm going to name myself, I am Padome. That was basically the first sin that was ever made, because you are part of Anu, you're always part of the greater whole, and now you separated yourself. And then every single Ada that came after that basically has been separating itself more and more and more from Anu. And which is interesting because you can argue that that's what a lot of elves are trying to do, basically to go back to Anu by destroying the world. But what's interesting is that the greater truth that Sotha Sil sort of believes, and keep in mind that he's basically omniscient, like he's a god basically. His greater truth is that Daedras don't actually exist. That Padome doesn't actually exist. Of course, he sees it from the angle that all that there is that Anu is, but he believes that the only reason that we believe that Daedras exist is because of the imperfections of the world, and he calls it the Great Lorkhan Lie, which comes to the idea that Lorkhan wanted to create a physical world so that everyone could sort of succeed expectations. He created the idea of expectations. He created the idea of having physical limits to things. This world, everything that you see before you, is the very idea that there are limits. You can't jump too high because that's a limit. You can't run into that tree because that's a limit. You need to breathe, you need to eat, you need to exist. The idea that there is time, the idea that like there's a past and a future, it's all based on the idea that there are limits, which is something that the original Anu never had. There were no limits. He was everything, right? And that's what Sotha Sil considered the Great Lorkhan Lie. And everything that you see before you is based on this lie. on this prison that you're supposed to overcome. And that Daedrus existing is also part of this lie, that they're not actually real. Of course, the very idea being that Sodasil specifically, he's sort of like a great engineer. He's sort of almost like the idea of a Dwemer, in that he believes in the idea of mechanization of everything, the idea of basically becoming machine. And that comes from the angle that, like, if we're all machines, basically, then gods sort of die, Daedrus die, because Daedrus and gods need supplicants. They need people to venerate them, because if they don't get venerated, they essentially die, right? So if there's nothing to venerate them, then they just die. They don't, and that's essentially the idea that they don't exist. So now that I go back to that one sentence that I told you guys to remember from Sheogorath, he said that he is just a figment of my imagination, basically a part of my brain. And that's what I was gonna get back to, was that according to Sodasil, the greater truth is that the Daedrus don't actually exist, that they're just in our brains. If our brains didn't exist, because we are basically reflections of Anu, we are all together. Like, Daedrus and humans and elves, we're just part of the same thing. We're just thoughts from Anu, essentially. We're just molecules in the great body of Anu. None of us really exist. And the reason that I'm bringing this up, because this sounds like this has nothing to do with the topic of this video. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Sodasil said that there was only one entity in the entire universe that understood this great truth, and that entity was Jyggalag. That Jyggalag was the only entity that actually understood the greater truth. And of course, you can see now the connections between Sodasil and Jyggalag, both sort of being entities of order. I mean, there is no greater order than mechanized order, right? It's pretty clear. And he said that this truth was so alarming to Jyggalag that it forced him to basically dominate the universe in order to bring this truth to reality, this order, right, the greater order. But that the truth was so much for Jyggalag to bear that it made him mad. Now, of course, tricky to know if he's being literal, that he actually went mad, because we know that Jyggalag was cursed. It's not like he actually went mad. But that's basically the interpretation of Sodasil. Now, what's interesting is that Sodasil is also basically like mechanized, like his body is basically part machine. And then when you look back into Elder Scrolls Oblivion and you see the concept art for Jyggalag, many of the notes that were made by the developers on the concept art explicitly said that he was supposed to not look as human. Right? When you look at Jyggalag, he kind of looks like a Daedra, has like humanoid features and a body and a head and arms. The notes explicitly say that he was supposed to not be as human, that he was supposed to be more mechanized. He was supposed to look like a construct, that every single movement that he did was supposed to be precise and mathematical. And when you combine all these features together, I do find it kind of fascinating. Sort of like this greater truth and what it is exactly that Sheogorath wanted, and why he would want to expand his dominion, and why he might want to destroy the other Daedrus. And of course, Sodasil specifically states that the greater truth is a reality that Daedrus hate. It's a reality that Daedrus are afraid of. It's like the one fear that Daedrus really have. It is very well stated that Daedrus are afraid of Sodasil. Like that has been stated multiple times during the DLC for Elder Scrolls Online. And it was actually, thanks to Sodasil, one of the reasons why Daedrus don't actually dominate the world, why Daedrus don't invade the world, is because of the truth that is known by Sodasil. And thanks to Sodasil, they basically entered into this form of plea. Sodasil basically saying, if you don't invade this realm, if you don't invade Nirn, then blank. Then I will not blank, right? Like, we don't know exactly what was said during those pleas there, but the Daedrus are afraid of Sodasil. And it's interesting because, of course, Sodasil shares a lot of features with Jyggalag, and the Daedrus were also afraid of Jyggalag. And Sodasil says that the only other person that knows the great truth was Jyggalag. So there's a lot of weird connections there, which I personally find just so fascinating.
Do you mind? I'm busy doing the fish stick. It's a very delicate state of mind.
I've done it. I fixed Pelagius' mind.
Fixed is such a subjective term. I think treated is far more appropriate, don't you? Like one does to a rash or an arrow in the face. But no matter. Heartless mortal that you are, you've actually succeeded and survived. I am first to honor my end of the bargain. So, congratulations. You're free to go. They've been known to change my mind. So, go. Really.
Okay.
Pelagius Septim the Third, once the mad emperor of Tamriel, now so boringly sane. I always knew he had it in him. Well, I suppose it's back to the Shivering Isles. The trouble Haskell can get into while I'm gone simply boggles the mind. Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Clothes, check. Beard, check. Luggage. Luggage. Oh, where did I leave my luggage?
What is happening?
Master, you've taken me back. Does this mean we're going home? Oh, happy times. I can't wait to...
Yes, that's quite enough celebration. Let's send you ahead, shall we? As for you, my little mortal minion, feel free to keep the Wabbajack as a symbol of my... I'll just take the damn thing. You take care of yourself now. And if you ever find yourself up in New Sheo, do look me up. We can share a strawberry tart. Ta-ta!
And there you go, and he should kick me out any second. You can actually steal all the food if you want to, but there's no need for that. Now, it's interesting that Sheogorath has always had a strong fascination with Pelagius the Mad. So much so, in fact, that, see, when Pelagius was sort of like on the later years of his life, he was actually sort of banished from, even though he was the emperor, he was relatively like banished from the kingdom. And sent into multiple different insane asylums to sort of treat his dementia. And eventually he ended up dying in one particular asylum. But Sheogorath was so fascinated with this guy that he deconstructed the insane asylum where Pelagius died, and literally stone by stone, he reconstructed the asylum in the Shivering Isles, like completely. And of course, sent his heroes to sort of collect as much of Pelagius as it was possible, but the only thing that they could find was his hip bone. And that's why, you know, the hip bone is sort of part of this quest. It's one of the most sort of treasured items of Sheogorath, because for some reason, he just loved the guy. But in any case, yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else for us to do here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was pretty interesting. A lot of lore about Jyggalag and Sheogorath. A little bit about Potema. We'll hit Potema maybe. Should we do next episode? I'll think about it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to please follow me on Twitter. I've been loving all the support you guys have been giving me. You guys have been following me in there in great numbers, and I truly appreciate it. Be sure to watch my video that I uploaded. I believe it's gonna be it's gonna be yesterday, I think, by the time I upload this video, about Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if you guys are fans of Dungeons and Dragons, but I am, and I've been doing some lore videos on the series, so be sure to check those. But otherwise, yeah, I will see you guys this Thursday. Bye bye. I say good day, sir.